Weapons is the latest horror movie finally out in theaters, and with that, it is time for us to go into full spoilers on the movie. So that's exactly what I'll be doing here for you guys, is giving you my spoiler review for Weapons, diving into the ending, what was making these kids disappear, the satisfying parts of this movie, the other things I felt maybe could have been more satisfying, even trying to digest and get into theories and analyzing what some people think the movie is about. But it won't just be about my opinion. I really want to hear from you guys, because there's been a lot of opinions. Zach Cregger is building this reputation for unique, refreshing takes on horror, but also that really divide audiences, where some people are going in thinking, this was so overhyped. What a mid-movie. I can't believe people like this. I've been getting a lot of those comments in my review of the movie. But alright, just diving into it here, I think I'm of the camp where I still love Barbarian more than Weapons, but I was pretty pleased with Weapons as a whole. Although I'm not as high on it like I've seen a lot of other of my movie mutuals, I still really like this movie, and I found it to be such a unique, fun journey. And I think that's where Zach Cregger is doing an amazing job with at least the marketing, or just the way his movies are presented. They give you this pretty awesome idea. The Barbarian, it was just two people who double booked an Airbnb, and you're like, okay, I wonder what could happen there. And then when you see the movie, there's so much you did not expect to see unfold. And I think the same thing goes down with Weapons. The movie all opens up with a narration of a little kid saying, "This is a true story. In my town, kids disappeared." And that part of the movie really surprised me when I first sat down. I was like, oh, okay, I hope this narration doesn't happen all throughout the movie, because I'm not a huge fan of that, especially when it's just a little kid going, "And it was a really weird time. My mom and dad disappeared." But it was really just to breeze by and set up the thing that the trailers have already been doing, is that a bunch of kids woke up one day at 2:17 a.m., walked off into the middle of the night, and it's been a month since we've seen these kids, and we have no idea what happened. And there you go. The movie now begins. I actually ended up loving the way the movie did that, because it let us just dive right into the story, the turmoil of everything going on. I really thought like the movie was going to spend the first 10-20 minutes getting to that point. Like maybe we know a couple of the kids, we're starting to see who could have done it, and then boom, they disappear. But I was like, oh, from the beginning of the movie, these kids are gone. And so the way the movie decides to unfold the mystery and give us layers to what actually happened to the kids is giving us the perspective of each one of the main characters through the course of a couple of days, sometimes weeks, with each member giving us a clue to what actually happened to the kids. I did really like that. I know some people found that a little bit meandering, or like they were really stretching out the story. It never got to that point to me, because even when we would intersect with characters and they would repeat a section of the story, it was never done in a way where it was like boring. But I will say there was a time, like, because I think early on, the principal, all gouged out eyes, chasing Julia Gardner through the gas station, and then it takes like 3 other character perspectives before we get back to Wong. That was the only time I was frustrated, because I'm like, I want to know what happened to Wong. But I guess the thing that held me over until we got to that explanation is each character's story is interesting in itself. I just think once we find out what's actually happening, looking at some of these other perspectives, it didn't feel like it was completely necessary with what was going on with the kids, which was the main thing I was glued and wondering about with this movie. Like, I love Julia Gardner's perspective as the teacher, right? She's riddled with this guilt, and she's like, why did my class disappear? Why was I the one chosen? And the entire town hates her. She's getting threatening calls, people knocking on her doors, even a parent painting the words witch on her car. Like, I like that perspective. Even more so Josh Brolin's perspective. He plays this like really tough father who you can tell has never really sat down and told his kids, I love you. In fact, there's a beautiful scene of Josh Brolin in the room of his son, staring at a photo of him, apologizing, saying, I wish I could have said it more because I feel it every day. I'm hurt. Like, I don't know, that kind of stuff I really like, and it added on to the trauma of these kids disappearing. But then we got to other perspectives, like Alden Ehrenreich, who plays this cop. He's connected through Julia Gardner because they're two people that sometimes have a fling together, even though Alden Ehrenreich is married and is trying to have a baby with his current wife. Oh, and his current wife is also the daughter of his boss, the police chief captain, who he obviously wants to stay on his good side because that's who he has to answer to. And it's like, I'm not saying that wasn't interesting in itself. I just felt it didn't add on to the kid mystery I was more intrigued with, because we're dealing with the fact that he's sober, so he's dealing with an alcohol addiction. He's cheating on his wife, and as his story went forward, he ends up beating up a homeless character played by Austin Abrams, who also gets his own perspective in the movie that we'll talk about in a sec. And it was just little things like that that I couldn't figure out why we dedicated so much time to, when there were other elements in the movie I would have rather have dedicated that time to. I'm gonna be a bit nicer on the homeless character's perspective, played by Austin Abrams, because I thought he played the role really well and was responsible for a lot of comedy in the movie. So this guy's just kind of a junkie. We follow him as someone who like just goes around seeing if car doors open so he can like take whatever, pawn it. But he was really hilarious, and he actually is the character that stumbles upon the house and basement where these kids are being kept, and instead of like finding happiness or joy that it's like, oh, I found missing kids, he's like, oh, there's a $50,000 reward and I want that money. And that was all funny. His conversation with the cops, him even telling the police officer, you're gonna take that reward for yourself, are you? Oh man, hilarious. I love that comedy, but it was another perspective that when everything was said and done, all the screen time that was dedicated to him, I felt could have been shortened down, because there were other things I would have focused in on, like the final perspective that we get, that I felt like this should have been the main character of the movie, Alex. So the final perspective that we get gives us the answer to what exactly happened to these kids. We follow the one kid in the classroom that did not disappear that night at 2:17 a.m. and is the only kid left in Julia Gardner's class. A little boy named Alex, who happened to have his aunt that he's never met visit his family, where it's revealed his aunt is essentially a witch. She's dying of some sort of disease, and the mother is just trying to comfort her sister before her passing, but the aunt has tricks up her sleeve to be able to continue living longer and make herself feel better, which is where we get introduced to kind of this weird witchcraft spell that involves twigs, wrapping hair, a bowl of water, and snapping it. All of that I loved, okay? I do not hate the revelation and finding out that the thing responsible for these kids disappearing is a witch. A very creepy one, in fact, because she shows up a little bit throughout the movie. Josh Brolin's character has like a dream sequence where he sees a gun above his house, which we'll talk about in a sec. The homeless character's like running away and she sees her off in the distance, and this goofy wig she's wearing, her makeup. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for the witch to be showing up in these dreams and jump scaring characters, because she's trying to avoid being seen or caught. So why is she making herself appear in these people's dreams, you know? That's to me where it felt like, oh wait, this is a horror movie. I need horror things to happen, because only in the beginning and really in the ending does the horror elements come back. Yes, there was a lot of great creepy moments of like characters looking at doors that would open and people that were being controlled by the witch going out walking funny and cutting people's hair. All of that was creepy and effective. There was just such a minimal amount to it. I feel like they added on those jump scares of her appearing in dreams just because we needed something to be there. But anyways, the aunt first possesses Alex's parents, the mom and dad, in a really horrific and heartbreaking scene where Alex is there just like, my aunt, what's wrong with my parents? Why are they just there? And the aunt basically says, hey, you're gonna listen to what I say, and if you decide not to, I'm gonna make your parents do this. And the parents start stabbing themselves with forks in the face. Dude, that had to have been so psychologically scarring to that kid. It broke my heart to see him get up and go, Dad, stop, no. Very good, effective stuff. And again, it kept me on my toes, because once you started seeing that it was definitely Alex and his family member that was the cause of these little kids disappearing, in my mind, I was already theorizing. It's like, oh, you know what? I bet the kids are bullying Alex, and so the aunt wants to help out her little nephew and is going to get rid of these kids because they all bully him, or maybe they didn't show up to his birthday party, something like that. I would have been okay with that explanation, but no, that wasn't the case. It just turns out that the witch is able to like suck out the life force of both the parents, but that isn't enough to save her and keep her from dying from this disease. She needs younger blood. At least that's what's implied in the movie. And so she asks Alex to grab mementos from each one of the kids in her classroom, and then this is why the kids disappeared at 2:17 a.m. There is no significance to it being 2:17 a.m. That just happened to be the time the witch did the spell and all the kids went out in the middle of the night. And so the witch is just keeping the kids in the basement, draining their life force. And you can tell with every new victim she gets, the aunt does have a little bit more life, has a little bit more energy to her, and that's kind of was it. This is where the movie started to slightly fall apart for me. It didn't fall apart so much where I disliked the film, but when looking at that, I just kind of would have wanted a little bit more of explanation of her plan or her end goal. I didn't need the entire mystery of her ruin because they gave us enough pieces to understand she's a witch, she's doing spells, she's crafting stuff with little salt lines, a little magical tree, these branches, all that. Like, that's fine. You don't need to ruin the entire mystery of her. But when her plan kept unfolding, I'm like, no way you thought you were just gonna get away with kids disappearing like they were gonna stop looking. I was even shocked that police were not monitoring the house of the one kid who survived. How does nobody find that suspicious? Dumbest investigating team for not following up or investigating on this kid even after they interviewed him. But I mean, even speaking on the aunt character herself, man, she was creepy and she was so easy to hate. I love how much I hated this character, one, because of what she was doing to Alex, but even the sequence where she goes to the principal's house of Benedict Wong and then does that whole spell right in front of them and has Benedict Wong kill his own partner. Like, that's horrific and terrible. I loved how arrogant and powerful she felt, like she was in control the entire time. And that's really what made it so much more satisfying when Alex the kid was able to get his revenge. Essentially, towards the end of the movie, Alex sneaks up into the room of the witch and does the exact same spell that he's been watching his aunt do, but this time with the hair of his aunt, forcing all the little kids that have been in the basement to chase the witch across town, which I'm still mixed on whether I loved or hated that they played that up for laughs, because it's kind of played to be funny, almost like it's a Scooby-Doo chase sequence when they're running through the different doors in a house. And yeah, it got me laughing a little bit and all that, but I also wanted that to be very horrifying for the witch herself. And man, when these kids finally get their hands on her, they rip her apart, open her jaw, break her legs and arms. It was the most satisfying part of the movie. I was giggling and cheering at that moment. But then shortly after that, the kids are no longer under control, but they're still kind of catatonic where they're not really speaking. Same with Alex's parents. They're still catatonic, and we get revealed that Alex, after everything he went through, all his struggles, all his pain, his journey, he doesn't even get to keep his parents, ends up living with another aunt who isn't evil, probably does love him and will take care of him, while his parents are being cared for and looked at some sort of facility. That broke my heart, man. Like, out of everything, that little change would have fixed so much for me, because I did not like that Alex went through all that not to get his parents back, when at the same time the narrator also tells us all the little kids, yeah, they were quiet for a little while, but now they've started to speak and it looks like they'll be okay. I'm like, what? How come the little kids get to be okay, but not Alex's parents? Little bully boy got it so easy. This little bully was picking on the main character. I'm calling Alex the main character. I'm sorry. By the end of the movie, I didn't find much relevance or closure to Julia Gardner, the teacher's character. The movie tries to give us tidbits on her that, like, she's a good teacher and cares about her students, but as a person, she's a little flawed. She has a history of getting with married people, because it's said that she was fired from her previous school for having an inappropriate relationship with another teacher, probably again a married person, the way she was having that relationship with the married cop. She doesn't listen to rules and is kind of crosses that boundary between teacher and student, not in a sexual way, but in a way that a teacher should keep things professional with a kid. She didn't do that, and like none of that ended up really mattering to like the end of the story, and I was just like, why were we following her so hard? That's where I guess I'm having the most trouble with weapons, and there's a lot of discourse and argument right now with the movie about what is its meaning, what's it trying to tell us. And I think some people are going to get annoyed with that, because it's like, why does it need to have a meaning? Why does there need to be something? Every movie has got a meaning. It's trying to say something. If you want to be the cool kid saying, hey, sometimes just happens, hey, well, good for you, Cooley Coolenstein. We right here, we analyzers. You know, that's one of the things that made Barbarian so special and why I loved it so much. The allegory or the themes in that movie I found so profound. It's this whole idea about sexual norms. The whole opening about this woman who just meets a strange guy and her guard should be up, because it's like, I don't know you, dude. And with the history of the world, a lot of men take advantage of women in these kinds of situations. But no, Bill Skarsgård's character was actually a true gentleman, was trying to do as much good as possible, to where he was even overtly being nice that it ended up even looking creepy. And then that type of theme played in later into the movie, where you think the barbarian is the disfigured woman in the basement, but it's actually the guy who did that to her and put her in that situation. He's the real barbarian and monster of the movie, and I love that thematic theme in Barbarian. I thought it worked so well. So with Weapons, I'm watching it, I'm trying to understand the thematics between the story of a cop who cheats and has an alcohol addiction, a teacher who's also flawed but cares about her students. Like, it did seem to me the obvious allegory was that Weapons was a metaphor for school shootings. I thought that could have explained like the gun over the house, the way 17 kids disappear, the awful job the system, police department, and government do when something like this happens, the way that trauma ripples across the town and affects different people. That all thematically would have made it make sense to me, but Zach Cregger, the director, has been very open that no, that's not what he had in mind. That's not what the movie's about. And in fact, a lot of the things we're trying to analyze actually have no meaning. Zach Cregger has said that the gun on top of the house in that dream sequence doesn't really mean anything. It's just something that the director actually dreamed about, and he just thought, oh, I had it in my dream, so I'm just gonna put it in the movie and let people interpret it how they want. He took a lot of inspiration from David Lynch, who does that a lot in his movies, where things are left ambiguous, up into interpretation, and the movie could honestly mean whatever you want it to mean.
I think it's better to let people have their own interpretations of these things. I don't know, it makes it a more personal experience as a viewer, I think, if like you have to kind of plug some gaps. Yep. And like your version of the movie is going to be different than your wife's version of the movie. And I think that's fun.
And just to be clear, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking that approach and leaving some things ambiguous. It's just the reason I didn't 1000% connect it like with other people. Instead, just came out really liking the journey more than the conclusion. I just think things like that is going to be one of the reasons Weapons is not rewatchable for me. And rewatchability to me is like very important in a movie sometimes. I think back at the things that happened in this movie and watching it again, that it just wouldn't be satisfying because we're caught up with so many stories, so many things that amount to nothing by the end of the film, and the things I am curious and want to know more about is kind of rushed and played through. Still though, none of that ruins this movie for me. That's just kind of me picking at it a little bit. I still really enjoyed my time with this, and it was such a refreshing, unique experience, and I think that's why you see a lot of critics just praising Zach Cregger movies, because they're not the formulaic, stereotypical studio horror movies that get made. They feel unique, and that uniqueness is something us movie lovers who watch hundreds, thousands of movies yearn for, because it's like finally something I didn't expect. I see now that Zach Cregger's even being open about an idea for a sequel in this universe where he explores more of like the witchcrafty stuff. I would be so down to see that, because again, that's the part that had me most intrigued, and in a world like this where things like that are possible, I'd love to see other avenues. But even if not, I am down to see whatever Zach Cregger does, because he definitely has his own voice, and it's one where I'm buying a ticket every time. Anyways guys, that's just my thoughts on Weapons. I'd love to know from you guys. How do you feel about there really not being a meaning and it's kind of just seeing things unfold for the fun of it? Do you think the movie has a rewatchability to it? Anything, everything, be sure to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films, or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.